Houston, our instruments are showing that we have a incoming message from deep space. Repeat, Houston, we have an incoming message from deep space. Houston, we'll begin playing message now. Houston, we're going to try and translate that up here. Hold for translation. Translation complete. We'll begin playing message now.
Hey, it's me, Melissa.
What do you do when the aliens invade? Take a shot of MK Ultra and watch Melissa Jade. Put on your tinfoil hat and tune right in. We got that crime spree, flat earth theories, government conspiracies, a complex Mandela effects, unidentified optics, a mind expanding, fake moon landing, what it all bends understanding. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa. Aliens is on the sun or in Area 51. Time travels, unravels, haunted castles, cops are baffled, potential experimental thoughts that make you transcendental. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa. Crime sprees, flat earth theories, government conspiracies, complex Mandela effects, unidentified objects, a mind expanding, fake moon landing, what it all bends understanding. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Callie, Alicia, Kim, Chezzy, Roro. It's not rocket science, dude. Jelly Baby, Melanie, Stars Align, Sabrina, Iris, Kimberly, Creative Mind. Ooh, it's Wicked Witch Wednesday to study Letecia. Hell yeah. Hi, Note Not Today. Michelle, Leanne, Peaceful Grammy. Thank you for becoming a member, Science Sense. Hey, Riley, Sherry, Sarah Bellum, Lee the Bee, Crime Crochet Coiffee. Ooh, new kitchen flooring. Nice. Hi, Terry. Fragile Like a Bomb. Mick Not Mac. Beetlebug. Victoria. Lily by Starlight. Petunia. Artemis Prime. Harlot People Me. Hey, guys. Hi, honey. Hi, Yonos Modesto. Cutie Pie. Megan. Sprinkle Dog Nut Mally. Hello, Joyce. I always laugh so much at that. I don't know why I find it so funny. Hi, Kayla, Mindy. So it's been like almost a week since we've done, probably a week actually. Yeah, I think it's been a week since we did a Letecia live. Because I had taken a few days off and then we were doing the Wade stuff. Hi, Amanda. Hi, Lisa. Thank you, Amanda. Hi, Anything is Possible. Lace Lamons. Yay, Lace Lamons. Hi, Jenny B. And so I'm excited. We're on episode 21. We last left off with Harley's testimony, and Harley just got off the stand. For anybody who doesn't remember, where were we? We had finished Harley. There was like 3 lives in a row where we had her direct, cross, redirect, and jury questions. And that's where we ended. So I don't know what witness is up next. We're going to find out. But we're getting closer and closer to Dr. Dorothy Lewis. And if anybody watched Wade Wilson's yesterday, regarding getting the death penalty, the doctor they had up on the stand kind of reminded me a bit of Dr. Dorothy Lewis. Terry, so you're up for the creepy girl, the creepy woman. We miss you too, MMC. So, let me see. All right, let me pull up. Hi, we got help. All right, so let me pull up. Before we get started. Why does that always happen? Hold on, let me jump down. Okay, so we have these active Amber alerts. I want to go, even though we've done these missing children before, but they are active and up on the missing child's website. So, why do I always do that? Sorry. We have Willow Bryant missing since August 14th, 2024 out of Los Angeles, California. She is 2 years old. And it says Wyman and Willow. This is Wyman, her brother. Okay. Wyman and Willow Bryant were taken by David Walker James, Tiffany Bryant in the city of Los Angeles. Wyman is 4 years old. He has blonde hair, blue eyes, 3 feet, 5 inches tall, 34 pounds. Willow is 2 years old, blonde hair. It says brown eyes here, but it says blue eyes on the other one. I don't know why. There's a discrepancy there, but she stands 2 feet tall, weighing 20 pounds. David Walker James is a 53-year-old white male with gray hair, blue eyes, weighing 170 pounds. Tiffany is a 39-year-old white female with blonde hair, brown eyes, standing 5 feet and 4 inches tall, weighing 100 pounds. The suspects were last seen driving a 2008 Champagne Buick with paper license plates. If seen, call 911. So that's Wyman. And then this is Tiffany Bryant and David James. So if anyone you know has information on their whereabouts, call 911 or the LA County Sheriff at 213-229-1700. Hi, Jennifer, Bohohobo, Shane. I don't know. I don't think we're up to Dorothy Lewis today because we haven't got to John Grusing yet up on that stand. I think champagne is the color, Shane, but I don't know how to pronounce the enclave, I think it's called. I don't know how to pronounce it. Maybe I don't think so, Roro, because the first part says she has blue eye color, but then in the description it says she has brown eyes. So I just think it's maybe they messed up. Hi, Amasali. Such little cuties, Lisa. Hi, toe beans. The color would be champagne. So champagne is kind of like a beige-ish enclave. Thank you, Riley. Hi, Emily. Is day 18. I cheated just a little. Oh, that's okay, Melanie. Oh, thank you. Okay, day 18. So we are up to day 10. Yeah. So we know Dorothy Lewis is last. She's last. I know, Crown Crochet, right? We love our Grusing. So we ended with Harley getting off the stand, and we're moving on to the next set of witnesses. So it's day 10 in the morning. We're moving on to the next day. Pause real quick though. If you are a Patreon member, I'm probably going to be doing a Patreon live tomorrow. I just made a post on Patreon just to give you guys the heads up. So if you're a Patreon member, please keep an eye out if you want to attend the live in real time. I'm also going to be dropping short pre-record videos on Patreon because I want to do something different and I want to try out, like, I don't know. I've been like going back in time and I want to know if anyone was interested in doing a Ramsey live. I've done them before, but honestly, JonBenet Ramsey is one of the cases that's never gonna, like, I'm never gonna let go of it. And I have so many questions. And if you guys would be interested in a live pointing out all the things that don't make sense about the JonBenet Ramsey case, all of the times where the parents had a slip, in my opinion, let me know, because I've been kind of going back down that rabbit hole along with Madeline McCann. And so it's fascinating, Amasali. It's so fascinating. I don't know what time yet, Roro. I don't know if it's better for you guys to do before my live stream on the channel, which is, I always go around 7:30, or after, like a late live. You guys let me know what's better for you guys. Yeah, I've changed my mind a lot of times, Emily, but like that's why I kind of want to I enjoy revisiting it and going back over it and talking about like the window being bust open, no footprints in the snow, Patsy being in the same outfit. Yeah, Emily, yeah. It's fascinating, Crime Crochet. Hi, Musicity Mom. What I do know, Kimberly, is I think, and you know what, it's so funny. Well, I don't want to say funny. It's interesting because now with where true crime coverage is, I know better than to be accusatory. You don't want to accuse, especially parents, of in a situation like that. But the truth is that I've always believed it happened within the house. The person responsible is within that house. Yeah, the ransom letter. But I'm like, all right, that's not really appropriate to say, knowing that I shouldn't be accusatory. But like, I don't know. It's a very older case, not making excuses, but like, I genuinely believe there's more questions than answers there. Yeah, Tiger Lily, and that's noted in the police report that there were no footprints in the snow, and there was no sign of forced entry. Yet if that window was broken out, that would be the first thing fucking noted. That's because John broke that window earlier. Like, oh, hi Nancy Grape, hi Tim. Do you, Lisa? Like, yes, Homer, we're doing Jody. Shay actually just sent me some stuff on Jody. We're doing Jody, don't worry. But I kind of figured like as like a, just like a little pop-up or like a pre-recorded, whatever, like we could do Ramsey stuff too. It's me too, Tobeans. JonBenet Ramsey was the first like really main case I dived into. JonBenet would be the same age that I am. I remember seeing her all over the magazines and the tabloids and not understanding why she was all over. You know what I mean? I'll look again, Science Sons. What do you mean there was no snow under that window? There was no snow under that window. What do you mean? The report said there was no snow around the windows. There was only snow in patches. That's why no footprints. I don't understand what I'm supposed to be taking from that, though. I'm sorry. I'm getting a bit confused. Yeah, Roro. You were in middle school, Sabrina? Yeah. There was someone else in the house along with them that night that we don't know about. Yeah. And like the practice letter, and then going back through the interviews and stuff, neither Patsy or John ever said that they even picked up and read the letter. Like, it's weird. It's weird. Hi, Bogart. Hi, Chloe Moon. Oh, okay. I think I know what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, we're never going to know. We're never going to know. I've been watching. Has anybody watched the Scott Peterson stuff? So I watched the Netflix 3 episodes, but I'm still watching the Peacock. It's interesting. Hi, Keith. Hell yeah, it does. It does, Keith. Hi, Diving Owl. Yeah, I see what you're saying now, Tiger Lily. I'm sorry, I got confused originally. Hi, Cherokee Girl. You think it was an intruder, Callie? See, everyone has their opinions. But I'd love to go over it again because there are things that really just genuinely stick out in my mind that I'll never be able to shake it. I'll never be able to, that 911 call, there's so many things. Okay. So you deleted it? Oh, Tiger Lily. I'm on the first episode of the Peacock. I originally watched the Netflix one thinking that was the one. That was good too, but that was just basically like a recap and more Lacey's side of it, not side of it, sorry, but like just a recap of the case, and you had Lacey's mom speaking it. The Peacock is with Scott's newest interview, and I want to watch it. Well, I'm watching it, but I want to, like, I'm interested. I know that he's going for the burglary and she was abducted, but no, come on. My sister just told me, Riley, have you watched Chimp Crazy? And I said, no, what is that? And she's like, it's kind of similar to Tiger King and it's on HBO. So that's on my list too, but I haven't even watched the trailer, so I really have no idea what it's about. Hi, Natasha. That's interesting, Ange. That's interesting. Really, Melanie? Oh, crazy. I don't know how you can. Like, it's, I feel like that's one of the main ones when going into true crime, you know? But at the same time, it's kind of exciting because you get to go dig into it for the first time. And, like, it's interesting, you know, when you find a case like that and you dig in and you learn about it. You have, if you are not familiar with it, you get to experience that for the first time. Okay, so we are on no Roro. I try to keep my personal and YouTube very separate. That's why I don't usually share much shit. But no, I wouldn't want my family to watch anyway. Maddie Soto, yeah, there's a lot coming out with that. Oh, Kyron, yeah, that's frustrating. Have you watched the stepmom's interview on Dr. Phil? It's older, but that's one of the cases. And Timothy Pitson, Jesus. All right, so, oh, thank you, Lee the Bee. That, you have no idea how much that means to me. Seriously, thank you. It's you guys that make this place so amazing, as cheesy as that is. Yeah, I've covered Darlie Routier, Sherry King. If you go back, not that long ago, I did a live with Shay and Wolfie on Darlie Routier. But yeah, I would love to. I would love to. Yeah, Haley Cummings, that's a good one too. Okay. All right. So we are on the morning of day 10. Harley just got off the stand. Prosecution is continuing with their witnesses. So let's see who is up next.
So that they're aware of the exhibit number and the name. Will that be permitted?
Let's see. We got Tortellini in blue.
All right, we're just pulling up Letecia camera right now.
I moved that one.
Yeah, I used to cover the Daybell case in real time.
And Your Honor, I will move the easel once the jury is seated in front of the door.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that
Where's my
the other gentleman that's helping us doesn't walk into it if he opens the door.
Need my witness on the stand.
Entirety, then we'll let him know.
Letecia, who picked out her outfit?
The one that I remember.
Look at her.
It's a shirt we haven't seen her wear in court yet. This is the new one, I think.
And we shouldn't see it again. Hey, little Reddo.
Okay, so there, see what she's doing with her hands right now.
Oh, hell yeah, Tiger Lily. And I love
bit.
your name. It reminds me of Peter Pan.
As she starts playing with her fingers, it's something akin to this, where there's just a moment where she briefly puts down the other fingers and puts that one up.
Court will 20 CR 1358, People versus Letecia Stauch. Record should reflect the jury has returned to the courtroom. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Has anything occurred since we were last together that causes any of you to believe you could not continue to serve as
No, we're good.
one witness? Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
All right.
John Sarkisian, Your Honor.
John Sarkisian.
All right, we've got the sound effects turned off. If it's blurry for you, you might want to refresh your page or check the resolution.
And if you would raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear affirm the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Ms. Gratiano.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name again for the record and spell your last name as well?
So Lieutenant John Sarkisian. Last name is Sarkisian.
And Lieutenant, where are you currently employed?
At the El Paso County Sheriff's Office over the patrol division.
And how long have you been with the sheriff's office?
It'll be 22 years in September.
And over the course of your time at the sheriff's office, have you had many roles, different roles?
I have. I've been in many different units, patrol, detentions. I was the homicide or major crimes sergeant for approximately 2.5 years. Been in Metro Vice Narcotics, been over the SWAT team. So I've been in many areas of the office.
Sorry, little Redo, but I didn't mean to interrupt. But if you don't know about the Dr. Now magnets, you have to get them. Like, you don't look malnourished to me, you know? The Dr. Now magnets are fucking amazing. They're amazing. So if you aren't familiar with them, you have to check them out. Hey, Kate, you don't look hungry. Thank you, Neil's wife, for the super sticker. It's very kind. Thank you so much.
Different hats.
Yes.
In January and February of 2020, what was your specific assignment?
Yeah, look at that bow tie.
So I was assigned to the Special Operations Division, which is over our SWAT team, as the SWAT commander. And I also had our traffic unit and some other smaller units.
And as it relates to the special operations section, as it relates specifically to the investigation of the disappearance of Gannon Stauch at that time in January of 2020, what was your specific role?
So I was assigned as basically the incident commander for the search efforts. I was called to a meeting and basically assigned in an incident command system. The way it's set up, we have operational chiefs in different positions to run different aspects.
I'm just going to jump forward to the meat and the potatoes of what he's up there to testify for.
And running SWAT.
And means, what is that?
So it's just it's a whole system put together. It looks like a tree that's broke out into everybody's role. So when you come in for the day, you know what you're doing.
And you're overseeing that tree?
Correct.
Okay. And now you mentioned the scope of the resources. Is that something that you personally, while you work with the sheriff's office, have you ever seen something on this scale before?
I haven't.
It was massive.
And in terms of what was known to you and other members of law enforcement in January and February of 2020, had the location of Gannon Stauch been identified yet?
It had not.
Okay. You mentioned many resources. Can you give the jury an idea of which agencies came in to help and assist you?
So the two major ones would have been search and rescue, and then the National Guard came in. The National Guard was able to provide a lot of volunteers, a lot of different people that were able to help out with the search. And then search and rescue was also the other big one. They pulled people from wherever they could from different search and rescue units to come in and help. We also had different agencies. I know you'll probably get into it, but when we moved up north, we had Douglas County that helped. Had a lot to.
They had a lot of agencies.
It depended on, in the beginning, there was a lot, so to say. And to answer your question, I would say anywhere between, it could be 20 or 30 people helping to hundreds. So it just depended on the area, the time frame, and the availability of people. We were trying every day to get as many people as possible because it's just easier to cover the area we were searching.
Now, in terms of your initial efforts in organizing the very massive search, end of January of 2020, where were the search efforts as you were supervising them? Where were they focused? What part of the city?
So we started in that Lorson Ranch area, which was down south. We kind of started from the residence and moved north from there. So as the command over the search efforts, I had a liaison in the detectives division, and which was another lieutenant. So I didn't have a lot of case detail. He was just providing me areas to focus searching. So he would call and say, hey, We have this little bit, or we have this little piece of information.
Little Red. Thanks, Little Red. Little Red just gifted memberships. Please make sure to thank Little Red. Show your appreciation if you just got one of those. Thank you so much. Hey, Cookie Mom. Let's give some green joy tonight. Thank you, Little Red. You're so kind.
We need to, search in this specific area. And then we would identify zones in that area and then organize people.
Are you guys okay if I kind of like jump through it? Because I don't know what exactly he's testifying to, but it's pretty monotone.
On how. Then we also moved across over by Fountain Creek. I am.
Okay. And can you give the jury a frame of reference as to when the search efforts you were coordinating were focused in that particular area?
Just for clarification,
Okay.
you're talking about the Perry Park or Highway 105?
I understand he organized the searches and stuff. I just don't know if there's any
I feel
aha moment.
Places off the road.
Okay.
So we didn't spend a lot of time in the 105 area.
I mean, what is it heavily wooded? What is the area that looks, we're talking about the South Perry Park Road area. What does that look like?
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar, as you head up out of Palmer Lake, it's kind of open fields. There's a very specific S turn that comes out of town. And once you hit the first S curve and you start up, it becomes to be very heavily wooded, so to say, brush, big pine trees. And then you move, the road turns back to the right to head north. And there's also a lot of trees and some fields, but you're right up against the mountains at that point. So it's pretty heavy cover.
Now, you mentioned various tools and resources that were of use, but specifically in that area, what kind of tools and resources were really essential for you guys?
So when we were first sent up to that area, when I drove it to go kind of get an idea of where to put the command post and how we're going to separate it into zones, I noticed there was
I'm just jumping around.
They tend to break or they lose them or whatever, but that doesn't feel like the ground should, then they'll stop and then they'll, dig the snow out, clear that area, search more specifically for what's under the snow there. Once they identify it, then they can move on and continue to do that. So obviously shovels.
Regarding like the particle board maybe that they found?
Drones, a plane. Sorry.
Does he have a phone call?
What was information that law enforcement was received that had you focus in that particular area?
So like I said, I had a liaison through the detectives division. He had provided some information that a tracker information had shown a vehicle that traveled up through that area and then had specifically slowed down in a certain section and then moved. And then I think it had come back through. But the information provided to me was that the, vehicle was up in that area.
And the specific vehicle that you're referring to, do you remember the make, model, year, anything like that?
I don't. I recall him telling me that it was Letecia's vehicle that was that they had tracked up through that area, and that's why they were moving us up there.
Okay. And in terms of, you mentioned the law enforcement resources in terms of tracking that vehicle, did that include members of surveillance, MB&I, that sort of information provided them to you?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I don't know if they actually, I wasn't privy to that information, whether or not they had followed a vehicle or not.
Okay. On February 15th of 2020, were you on duty that day?
I was.
Okay. And did you find anything in particular of note on that day?
I did. So on February 15th, I mean, like I said, we'd been working several days in a row, doing a lot of search efforts. On that day, go ahead.
And sorry to cut you off, but we'll go through, I'll introduce a few exhibits through you, but before we get there, to start, what was the particular item that you located?
So I located a piece of particle board.
Okay, yeah.
It was approximately 2 feet by 2.5 feet and 1/2 inch thick. That was off the side of the road.
Okay.
Okay.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness?
You may.
Thank you.
Okay.
out in the woods.
Do you recognize it?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
That is the upper turn of the S turn of this search area.
Okay. And you mentioned that you found a board, that
Correct.
there's a label that appears on this map. Does that label mean anything to you?
Yeah, that would be accurate to the location where I found it.
And is People's Exhibit 326 a fair and accurate representation of that area and where you located that board?
It is.
Your Honor, permission to admit People's 326 for the record.
Exhibit 326 will be admitted. And before we go further in, just about something that we discussed earlier, the jury should also know that Exhibit 279 is also admitted by stipulation. It is a CD disc.
Okay.
Sarkisian, can you point out for the jury the particular area? I know that the label is clear, but if you wouldn't mind standing up and just going through the area and pointing out a few things on the map for me. So you mentioned an S turn. Can you explain to the jury in part, kind of what you mean by that?
So if this map continued, the road curves back this way. So as you come up here, this would be the upper turn, and then it's heading north out of town that way.
Okay. And you mentioned coordinating search efforts. Can you give the jury a frame of reference on People's Exhibit 326, where you were coordinating all those efforts from, if we can see it on that map?
So we basically made this into.
All right, I'm jumping through
Okay.
this.
A
This
cool
is
way so you
Ugh.
understand.
Back through the chain, which would on that day so we had a variation up there.
Behind you, People's Exhibit 327. Can you orient the jury as to where we're at on the map in front of you? Where is this photo?
So as this photo is taken, it's taken from here on this map. So it's actually pointing up at the S curve as you come around it.
And there's also a pointer. It's an old school pointer that may be on the witness stand. You'll have to extend it. If you'd like to use that,
Okay.
you can. There are a number of cars that we see on the road there. Are those some of the people that are helping out the search effort?
Correct. Search and rescue and or National Guard.
Okay. On the passenger side area of those cars, there appears to be a large,
Hey, beach lover.
large white area next to those cars. What is that?
Are you looking at this right here?
Yes.
So this is a berm that is just built up from the road right there. I don't know if it used to have a pond behind it or what, but it's just maybe a 7 or 8 foot berm.
Okay. And as you're out there for search efforts on February 15th of 2020, can you walk the jury through what were things that were of note for you? Maybe in People's Exhibit 328.
Oh no, Katie!
What are we
I hope
seeing
she
in this
feels
particular
better.
photo? That may be helpful for you to explain.
Okay.
Oh.
So just for clarification, do you want as far as the board goes or?
And just
Yes.
explaining your efforts that day as it led to you finding the board.
Okay. So on this particular day, obviously with these vehicles lined up here, we had searchers in our zone, which on this map over here would have been up through this area would have been the zone that they were in. On that particular day, on the 15th, I had been in the command post for several days, and so I grabbed one of the search and rescue guys that was one of the head guys for the operation and said, "Hey, let's jump in the Razor," which you saw in the other picture. Can you actually go back one picture?
Yeah, no problem.
So this guy that's parked right here is what we ended up taking from the command post, which was significantly north of this location. I said, "Hey, let's just get out and go check on the searchers, see how it's going out there in the zone." As we were getting out there, we were notified that one of the dogs had alerted on a area, which from this picture would be basically behind this berm. There's a gate you can't really see, like a barbed wire fence. So up behind the berm there, the dog had alerted.
Okay, I'm just gonna kind of jump
Significant.
through these photos.
I'd asked animal when I got up to about this area, and generally in this area, I noticed a board sitting on the ground. There was some footprints past it, like other searchers had walked through that area, but it did not appear that the board had been moved. I say that because there was
Hey,
snow on
Justice.
part of the board, and the snow was not cracked, so it's not like someone had moved the board. So
And-
when I saw the board I could see right off had some type of stain or something on it. As I moved closer to look at it, I used a glove I actually had to move it because I didn't know what it was at that point.
And I'll stop you there, sir.
Sorry.
We're going to walk through. That's fine. But I want to show the jury People's Exhibit 329 so that you can use these to explain. So as you approach that area, what are we seeing as People's Exhibit 329?
So this is the barbed wire fence is in the background here. You can see the post. So I was walking up this way. This is the board. This is the stain I'm referring to on the board, and then the snow, how it had caught the corner of it was still sitting under the snow.
And is this how the board appeared to you when you first spotted it?
It is.
Okay. And so before I cut you off,
So
you're
this is
explaining
where
the
he
jury how
originally
you'd
left his
seen the edge
body,
of the
guy.
board, and you mentioned a glove. Why did you use a glove?
Well, once I saw the board and saw that stain on the board, knowing we were looking for any items that could be associated to this case, so we had put that out to search and rescue, National Guard to look for any and all items that could be of evidence. So one thing to note for these search efforts we'd been doing, we had been checking the sides of roads a lot. So what do you come across a lot on the sides of road? Trash, cans, old gloves, socks. I mean, you name it, we found it. So a lot of the stuff that was found along the sides of the road, you don't know if it's evidence until it's evidence, basically. So if someone found something, we would say if it looked like something that could possibly be evidence, to notify someone from command, and then we'd send out people to collect it.
And in terms of distance between where the road is and where you've now discovered this board, can you give us an approximation?
From the road to the berm, I would estimate 20, 30 feet. This was probably in the middle of that, somewhere 10, 15 feet from the edge of the road to the berm. So it wasn't far off the road. I mean, this is the road right here.
And so that we can just get a frame of reference for distances, when you say
All right, I'm gonna jump
Right.
through.
This would be the berm.
that berm, you mentioned seeing a stain. We'll look at People's Exhibit 330. Now at this point, what has now happened with the board?
So at the point that, like I said, I put a glove on to move it because I couldn't tell exactly. So as I got closer to it, I barely moved it. And from my training experience over the years, as soon as I saw that, I was like, that's blood. So I put it back in the position that it was in. And like I said, I barely moved it, just enough to get that look at it. So I set it back in there and then notified one of the FBI personnel to come photograph and collect it.
And is it because the FBI was there to help coordinate search efforts, but also collection of evidence?
Correct.
Okay. And in terms of collection of that particular piece of evidence, who specifically, the FBI then took it into evidence?
They did.
Okay. Do you recognize People's Exhibit? You've already said you recognize it, but can you give us a frame of reference for what we're looking at now in People's Exhibit 331?
So just a scale to the size of the stain that was on the board.
Okay. Now, when you were there present that day, did you see any other pieces of particle board or wood aside from this?
I did not.
Okay. And what we're seeing in People's Exhibit 331, can you describe the top right corner area of that board?
Yeah, so I mean, this is how the board was when it was collected. So that broken edge, that's how it was.
Okay.
Yes, Melanie, this board was taken straight from the garage.
Your Honor, permission to approach with what has been marked as People's Exhibit 332.
Go ahead.
Sir, I'm showing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 332. Do you recognize it?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
That's the board that
I
seal and evidence.
in condition.
Yes, yes.
So this exhibit is the board, the package the board was collected in.
Yeah, let's go back to this one first. So along here, no, this was a barbed wire fence all the way up. And then if you go to the further out picture, right behind, basically behind this white truck, there's a break in the berm and there was a barbed wire gate. So where the actual board was there was no breaks in the barbed wire fence.
And just for the purposes of the record, Lieutenant Sarkisian is using People's Exhibit 327 and before that 328.
And were there any footprints collected?
That I don't know as far as, well, let me rephrase that. The footprints in the area were from us searching extensively. So any of those footprints in the snow were from searchers, so to say, if that makes sense. We had, like I said, we had anywhere from 30 to hundreds of people walking through there, going through there. I do not believe that FBI collected any footprints from that area.
All right. I will allow reasonable follow-up as to those questions only. Prosecution?
You mentioned footprints. To be clear, had search efforts, volunteers, other personnel, had they been through that area by the time you saw that board?
They had been. And not only that, I'll add, it had also snowed off and on, like I said, through that whole operational period. So there was new snow on the ground. There was old snow. Obviously, as we walked in the snow, everyone was creating footprints. So.
And in terms of looking for specific items or items of interest, was that information or directive relayed to the people that were helping out in the search?
It was some specific items were relayed, but in general, like I said earlier, it was any item that would spark your interest. Call someone to come take a look at a little bit closer.
And to be clear, when you approached that particular board, was it clear to you that it had been moved by the snow, or somebody had moved it in the snow?
That someone had moved it in the snow?
Somebody had moved it. What you observed as it relates to the snow on the board?
No, it had not been moved.
All right. Briefly. Go ahead.
Yeah, good, sir. So there were actually multiple footprints around that board, correct?
Not around the board, but kind of, if you can imagine, between the berm and where the board was, there's kind of like a pathway, an alleyway, so to say, that's just would be, you're not walking through the trees. So if you were going to walk that area, you would just walk through that opening. There was footprints through that opening.
Okay. And you didn't see who left those footprints?
No idea.
Oh,
So you're
really?
just making the assumption that you believe that they were somebody from the search party?
Well, search, that was the zone we were in. So there were multiple searchers, the canines, they were all in that area, moving through up and down over the, through the berm. I mean, all through that area.
Yeah, but you don't know for certain that none of those footprints were left by the person who left the board.
I don't.
Dude.
Okay. No further questions.
All right. Thank you, Lieutenant. You may step down. Watch your step as you step off.
All right. Next.
Oh, great. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this
You're
matter
the
will
one
be
who
the truth,
does.
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Go Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
He's got a lapel pin. It's probably investigative law enforcement of some kind.
Who's doing, Kevin?
Prosecution was just asking who's going to be cross-examining so he can consult with them about exhibits to see if they have a stipulation.
Mr. Clarke, remember you testified, I think it might have been last week, although it's kind of blending together. Still under oath, you understand that? Yes, sir. Okay. And you've already been introduced to the jury, so I want to have you just jump into some specifics here. And we'll actually get into some of the stuff about the board in just a moment. But before we get into that, are you familiar with call detail records?
I am, yes.
What are call detail records?
Welcome, Mimi
Call detail
Jack. Thanks for
records
becoming a
Are
member.
the activity the cell phone had with the cell phone carrier. So AT&T, Verizon in this case, all the calls to and from the device, all the text messages to and from the device, the data sessions to and from the device, or from the device to the network. All those have a date and a time that they occurred. And then phone number one contacting phone number two. And if it's an inbound or outbound, that'll determine if it's your target number or not. And then it has the cell phone tower and its location that service that activity for that phone to be able to make and receive calls, texts, data sessions.
Is it common in investigations for search warrants to be issued to phone companies, like you mentioned, AT&T or Verizon, to obtain call detail records for specific types of phones?
Every time.
How are those
Thanks,
records
Victoria.
used in an
Hey, Pickle.
investigation, in a general sense?
It places or does not place a device in an area during a time period using the activity from the phone and the towers that service that activity.
So basically for a phone, if it connects to a cell phone tower, does it somehow record, I should say, a location data for that particular contact event?
Little Red.
Yes.
I'm going to approach you with People's Exhibit 704 through 708. I've previously shown these to the defense.
Thank you.
Mr. Clarke, if you could just flip through those and then let me know when you're done flipping through those.
I'm done.
So in a general sense, what are these items, discs?
These are disks that contain the call detail records and the Life 360 GPS location data for the cell phones belonging to individuals in this investigation.
Individuals that would be relevant towards this investigation?
Correct.
So for instance, none of these are for detectives or anything like that?
No.
If we talk about
Okay,
People's
Benay.
Exhibit 704, tell the jury what People's Exhibit 704 is.
704 is a disk containing the AT&T call detail records for the defendant's cell phone.
Show us it
We've
was
heard
you.
testimony about two different phones associated with the defendant. One that was
Oh my
seized
God,
by
you
law
did.
enforcement at the end of Detective Bethel's interview. So I'll call that her Colorado phone. Is that this particular
Right, Shay?
disc?
Yes, this is the Colorado phone.
You were
And then
just
what is
talking about
People's
you earlier, Shay, with Jody, needing to do Jody, and how you had just sent me some Jody stuff.
Exhibit 705.
705 is a disk containing the Life 360 GPS location data
All right, show it to us.
program that you can put on your phone.
Yes, we know
Beware.
Life 360, sir.
Similar to cell phone data, does the Life 360 disc that we have there, does that include that location data for the defendant's phone using that Life 360 app?
It does.
People's Exhibit 706, tell the jury what that one is.
Just show it to us, please.
Enforcement.
We never seized the cell phone.
Okay. But how do you then get to the call detail records for that if the phone is never seized?
These are completely independent of actually needing the physical phone. This is all the activity from the cell phone towers. So you don't need to have a physical phone to get this data.
So does that come directly from Verizon as opposed to the physical device?
That's correct.
People's Exhibit 707.
These are the AT&T call detail records for Harley Hunt's cell phone.
And then People's Exhibit 708.
These are the AT&T call detail records for Gannon Stauch's cell phone.
Do each one of those discs that we just talked about, 704 through 708, do those include an affidavit from the provider? So AT&T, Verizon,
And Kimberly, hey,
Life360,
Chloe, Jade,
verifying the
out there, bye.
authenticity of the information contained on those discs.
They do.
And at this time, I'd move for admission of People's 704.
Okay,
Through
show us
708.
where
Bit
she
of
was at.
testimony, Judge. I'm going to approach with People's Exhibit.
Okay, approach.
Testimony from Lieutenant Sarkisian regarding that board that was found up at the S curve. In that general area that we're talking about, which is
Yes,
on the map there, I
Bigfoot
can't
is real.
remember
Hey,
what's the number
Michelle.
of that exhibit number. In 326. Is that actually in southern Douglas County where this location is?
It is.
Are you familiar with that area?
I am.
Did you actually go up there and see some of this stuff yourself?
I did. I was up there with another FBI agent the day the board was, and at the time the board was located.
During this investigation, were you present for the vast majority of this investigation
I was.
in this area?
Yes.
Do you
I
remember
when-
was there some location data, GPS data that
Oh
we've
my
already
God.
heard some testimony about that showed the GPS tracker that was placed on a vehicle traveling up to this area?
There was.
What date did that occur?
The first time was Tuesday evening, and the second time was Friday night of the week that Gannon went missing.
Okay, so Tuesday evening, would that be January 28th?
Correct.
And then the Friday night is which day?
The 30th.
30th? Okay.
Or, yes.
30th or 31st. Subsequent to the GPS tracker data going up to this S curve, do you remember if it snowed heavily after that?
It did.
Okay.
All right, I'm just jumping forward, guys, because
We'll take him.
Sometime in November, December of 2019, if I recall correctly.
that's his
2019
table.
sound correct?
Yes.
Had you, when you came across this photo, when you're looking
Thanks,
at
diving
Al's download data from his phone, had you already seen the board that was found up at the S curve,
Yes.
or at least photos of it?
I know that they're not going through anything.
Particular photo?
It is.
All right. So the
From the
picture
board.
taken inside the garage, is that on the right side of this particular comparison photo?
It is.
Point out for the jury the similarities between the two boards.
One of the obvious ones is the broken, in this instance, top left corner of the board, located at the S curve. And then the one in the photograph. The second one that might be more difficult to see is there's a penciled X on this board. You see it here on the S curve board. You can also see the bottom half of it right.
All right.
Thank you, sir. You may step down. Prosecution, current next witness, please.
Oh, no. Commander
What's
Mitch
something
Mihalko.
good?
Is that Mandra Mitch Mihalko? It's quite a name. I'm not sure who's going to spell that for me. Look, we'll try to Mander Mitch.
Do you swear affirm the testimony about giving this man will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Go ahead and have a seat in the stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you?
Well,
Good. Will you please introduce yourself to the jury and then spell your first and last name for our court reporter?
you bet. My name is Mitch Mihalko. Good morning. I'm a commander with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. My last name is spelled Mihalko. First name Mitch, Mitch.
Thank you, Mr. Mihalko. You said that you're a commander with the Sheriff's Office. How long have you been in that particular role?
Since 2021,
How long have you worked at the Sheriff's Office in total?
20 years.
Describe for the jury your various responsibilities through your career with the Sheriff's Office.
Sure.
I don't need all
Nearly
that.
7 years being
When you were a detective, what units were you assigned to in that?
in financial
I-
crimes. So actually, I have an
Post certification, so police officer standards and training certification.
yes, in 2000.
Okay.
It's been a while.
Yes.
Yeah. What was your assignment back in January of 2020?
January of 2020,
Hey,
I
Katie.
was a lieutenant overseeing the violent crime section of the investigations division.
What is the violent crime section of the investigations division?
Mainly person crimes. So everything from homicide, sex assault,
Oh,
missing
I hope you
persons,
feel
cold
better,
case,
Homer.
and assaults.
What is the jurisdiction of the sheriff's office? It may be obvious, but let's talk about that just
Sure.
briefly.
Jurisdiction is all of El Paso
Oh my
County.
God. Okay.
Within the city, do you pretty much leave that to Colorado involved?
Yes, it was January 28th of 2020. I was working within the division and actually contacted by Detective Sergeant Jake Abinchan.
I'm not
Detective
over
Sergeant-
Letecia, Scott. These witnesses are very important to the trial, but watching it for like a second time around, there's nothing coming from these witnesses. They're just protocol. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm waiting for a good witness to come up that'll be interesting.
Abinchan had let me know that there was
Hey, Tony.
some information that had come in about a missing child.
That's very
and
delayed.
provided me with the initial brief on that.
So as far as chain of command purposes, so we understand that, where did Detective Sergeant Abinchan fit in that chain of command?
So Detective Sergeant Abinchan actually fell under a different lieutenant, but
Hey, Purdue.
there were three sergeants at the time within that area, and all three sergeants worked as either on call or communicated concerning
I want a good
different
witness,
cases
man.
that were of interest to the investigations.
Oh,
division.
no militia.
What was your role
I
in
know.
that investigation?
Initially on January 28th, after I received the initial brief, I contacted Detective Sergeant Hubble because there were some concerning pieces of that brief to me, and I asked Detective Sergeant Hubble, who was the major crimes or violent crime sergeant at the time, to begin the investigation and assign detectives.
When you are briefed on something,
Yes,
does that
lovely,
inform
Quinn.
how you act as an investigator or how you use resources as an investigator?
It does.
So what were you briefed on from Detective
Feeding it
Sergeant
creative
Hubble
minds.
that was of concern to you and influenced how you proceeded from that point forward?
Sure. Detective Sergeant Abinchan had briefed me that on the 27th patrol, EPSO patrol had responded on a missing child. As we dug a little bit further into it, he said that the child hadn't shown up at a friend's house. He didn't have a history of running away. He was 11 years old and he took medication for ADHD, and that he was lightly clothed. So a number of those points were concerning to me, especially the age of the child, as well as the fact that he was going from point A to point B and did not show up. I didn't understand why initially it was reported as a missing or as a runaway child. And so I asked Detective
She's
Sergeant
sniffing
Hubble to
and
assign
eating her
detectives to it.
hair.
What was it about having a missing child was causing you
Okay,
some
little one.
concern or confusion?
Not knowing or knowing that such a young child who did not have resources such as money, a phone, any of those things was out there, and that he did not show up at a specific place, that was concerning to me because we didn't know the circumstances behind the reported runaway or missing child.
As the lieutenant in violent crimes, did you at some point basically assume overall command to designate resources going whichever direction were necessary at any given time?
I did. So my role and responsibility really is a high level overseeing of the investigation. The main parts of the work that's being done are being done by detectives and being overseen by a supervisor or a group of supervisors working in tandem.
Give the jury a sense of the scope of this investigation as far as, especially in these early days, how many people were involved in it in a general sense, and if other agencies got involved very early on.
Sure. Initially, 2 detectives were assigned to gather the initial information because, again, we didn't know what
See, it's this filler that
case was.
worries me.
So as those detectives began investigating, getting information, the scope of the investigation began to grow. And really the resources that are placed towards an investigation can expand or contract based upon the information that we receive. In this particular instance, at any given point, the scope grew to include our entire investigations division, all of our detectives, and I would have to look back at how many that was exactly, and including our detective supervisors. So the entire investigations division were pouring their resources to include crime analysts into the investigation. Early on, we began speaking with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the supervisory agents at the FBI because, again, not knowing what we had, this investigation could have been anything from a missing person to an abduction to any number of things, or even a runaway. But within the first week, probably day 5 or so, we had been in contact with the FBI and requested resources from the FBI.
Were there also even people from the DA's office that were involved in that investigation, from investigators and even attorneys?
Absolutely. So when we got to a point where we believe that there may be some criminality to the case, we did request some investigative as well as attorney resources from the DA's office.
You mentioned that in the course of an investigation, investigative resources can either expand or contract. What determines whether that expansion of resource use expands or detracts, or retracts, I should say?
So the investigation itself, the number of leads that we have to apply resources to, the depth of the investigation, and the complexity of the investigation. So it could be anything from we have 100 leads to 1,000 leads, and so we have to start assigning the priority leads to detectives. So that can very quickly take resources from an investigation. The depth is also very important. If there is technology,
I'm just jumping, not because I'm not interested in Tisha,
and then in more of a command level.
but the testimonies aren't.
Can you give the jury a sense of
interesting.
how this investigation compares in scope to any other investigation you've ever done?
This is the largest in scope, depth, and time, focus time, I should say, that I have ever been involved in.
Wow.
Were there area searches conducted in the early stages of this investigation to potentially locate a missing or lost child?
Yes, there were multiple.
Can you tell the jury just some of those things?
Yeah. So as we gathered information as to possible whereabouts of Gannon, we applied resources to that. Those resources actually were done in an instant command structure. So Lieutenant John Sarkisian was asked to head the search efforts in conjunction with multiple resources from our office and around the community. Another lieutenant that was working with me at the time, Lieutenant David Manzanilla, was tasked with being the liaison
Jumping through
areas.
Let's start initial stages of the investigation. Were the searches conducted around Gannon's home in that Lorson Ranch area? And was that the primary focus?
I'm not a good witness.
They were. So with a missing child or a runaway child, initially patrol will do an initial look at the house itself and search for the child. We found missing children hiding within houses nearby at other people's houses. Initial area searches are very, very important. I do know that there was an area search done around the area to include the new construction areas of that Lorson Ranch neighborhood.
Was the focus in that area looking in those fields and ponds and that kind of thing?
If this is all just about the search, it's not interesting.
Record reflects he's identified the defendant.
The record will so reflect. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ron. So you mentioned having two different versions being described, one to patrol and then one to detectives. were these two different versions almost diametrically opposed to each other? Meaning the first one is missing / runaway kid, and then the second one, as we saw in Detective Bethel, is a rape and an abduction.
Absolutely, yes.
Did that cause you some concern?
Yes, because that is not a normal thing to see that kind of a difference in accounts.
Talk to us about, in your experience as a detective, a person that's been in law enforcement for quite a number of years. If you decide that you need to detain somebody or detain a piece of evidence pending a search warrant, what is in your mind to make those decisions, and why do you do it that way?
Sure. So with this phone in particular, as I had mentioned before, I knew that the defendant was extremely difficult to get in for interview. We did not really know where the defendant was and was unable to locate her easily. We did know that she had these diametrically different accounts, which was in my mind somewhat indicative of a suspicious behavior. We knew that she was in contact with Al Stauch on a cellular device, and we also knew that device was within her current possession. I knew that if she had left with that cell phone at that point in time, it was highly likely that she had the opportunity to destroy any information on there, delete, maybe even get rid of the entire device completely. And I took the opportunity and I said, well, I took a look at that and I said, this was an exigent circumstance. So at that point, the phone was seized.
Okay. So in your experience as both a detective and in your command level experience that you've got now, have you found over time that it's sometimes common to find evidence of crimes on people's cell phones?
Yes, cell phones are
Oh, we're
often
getting up
used,
to the Google searches,
both
guys.
to track information, to track locations, to search for information as well.
Do you find that in today's day and age that people take their cell phones almost everywhere they go?
Yes.
Were those things playing into your mind as to why this particular cell phone might be important to seize? That exigency, potentially getting rid of the phone, and the fact that it's likely that there might be something helpful towards the investigation on this device?
Absolutely, yes.
May I approach with People's Exhibit 223?
You may.
Commander, if you could just take a moment and examine that item and let me know when you're done looking at it.
A teal.
Oh my God, it's her phone. You guys, I'm gonna go crazy.
0001382. Item number 26. Detective.
Does this appear to be the same cell phone?
Yes, it's the phone.
There's also just above the phone in that plastic display a little card. Tell us what that is.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So yes, it appears to be a SIM card, and my assumption is that is a SIM card from the cellular device.
Is it very common to have a SIM card that actually plugs into each cell phone to allow it to operate?
Yes.
At this time, I'd move for admission of People's 223.
It's her phone, guys. It's her phone. Thank you, Lita B. Because now I feel like I don't want to skip, because I'm like, it's not that I'm disinterested. Versus I knew I didn't want to go through the entire trial, because certain witnesses, they're very important for the actual trial, but to do the recap, they're not all interesting. And so I'm going a little bit crazy because I want to jump past, because it's not a super interesting witness, and I'm looking for a super interesting witness, but I'm going in chronological order. So I'm gonna skip, because there literally nothing is gonna happen. He's just gonna confirm it's her phone, confirm he did the data extraction, the same old stuff. But I want a good witness. Give us something. Let the jury back in. Letecia looks like a fucking wall.
Seated Court will recall CR 1358, People versus Letecia Stauch. Record should reflect the jury has returned to the courtroom. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Ron. So where we had last
Oh,
left off,
he's still
in
here?
Mihalko, was we were talking about the different searches of the 6627 Mandan Drive.
Okay.
Think you've testified that on February 7th is when the scene was officially locked down. I mean, what does that mean when you lock down a scene?
So at that point, detectives changed the locks on the residence. They disabled
He's still
the
here,
garage door,
darling.
so they wouldn't be able, no one would be able to access the residence from the garage. And we
Okay.
on
Okay.
scene that could produce multiple leads.
Okay.
When you respond out to a homicide scene and a body is still on scene, is it very typical to find bodily fluids on the scene,
It is distinctly possible, yes.
like blood?
Mhm.
You have to say yes or no for the court report.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Potentially body tissue even.
Yes.
Are those things helpful to drive where an investigation goes and how it develops?
Yes, it does help us with determining method and dependent upon the scene, that evidence can also help lead us to potential directions and suspects.
Did you, in fact, ever go to 6627 Mandan Drive yourself?
I did.
Did you see things inside that house that led you to believe, based on your training and experience, that something violent had occurred inside that home?
Yes, I did.
What were those things?
We saw blood patterning, blood stain patterning, blood staining within the room of Gannon Stauch.
When you say blood patterning, are you talking about blood stain pattern?
Yes.
Where was that generally located?
On a wall, and I don't remember which direction of the wall, but on a wall that was near where Gannon's bed was previously located.
Did you also have a chance to observe where blood had seeped through carpet and puddled onto the concrete underfloor?
Yes, I did.
Did it appear that there had been a fairly large amount of blood that had seeped through that and stained that floor?
Yes, it appeared that there was a significant event there.
Having that sort of seeping through and puddling, is that consistent with other murder scenes that you've been on?
Yes.
In an ideal world, if you know that a crime has been committed inside of a house, do you prefer to seize that and prevent people from going into a scene right at the very get-go?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because anyone moving in or out may inadvertently move evidence around or transfer pieces of evidence from one place to another.
So we've already talked about the phone call coming in on January 27th, and then the scene is not locked down until February 7th. So we're talking a number of days. Did you have concerns with that span of time from a command level and from your experience about that scene being compromised at all?
From the time as the investigation unfolded, I believe that the investigative teams were acting appropriately and searching for the evidence that was necessary. But as additional information came to light,
get that close.
that caused us to have to go back. So as of February 7th, we determined and realized that the scene itself needed to be locked down, which is what we did.
As this case developed and days after days rolled along, did it become less likely that Gannon was going to show up alive?
Yes.
Were you developing investigative leads that were acted on and evidence being found, like on the S-curve, like we heard from Lieutenant Sarkisian?
Yes, and please remember, I mean, this was a team of investigators that was not only following leads that were generated with the defendant as a potential suspect, but we had hundreds, if not 1,000+ tips that detectives also had to vet and determine if there was direction that we need to take on those as well.
During the pendency of the investigation phase of this particular case, were there daily meetings starting with the sheriff's office
Yes. Yes.
in those meetings?
At the most,
And then was information that was passed along in those meetings acted on each day by different investigative teams, both locally and then
When you say she held it out
Okay, hold on. I want to listen to
several,
be with
uh,
Come on, Cook. Hit us with your best shot.
Cross-examination.
thank you,
Mr. Cook.
Come on, Cook. Okay.
Commander. Good morning.
good morning.
My name is Will Cook, and I'm sure you can tell by now I represent Miss Stauch.
Look at that, Cook.
So this was originally a missing child, and or originally was a possible runaway, but then became a missing child. What day or what time was that where this switch took place from runaway to a missing child?
I couldn't give you the exact date and time.
Time?
It would be within the first couple of days officially. It went from a runaway to a missing endangered.
And did you make that determination to?
I did.
Okay. Now, we watched several hours of Detective Bethel and the other detective interviewing Miss Stauch and saw the incident where the phone is seized by you, and we saw that on video.
ACS.
When you say she held it out, did you ask for the phone or did you just grab it
Oh
from
my
her?
God.
I believe that I had asked her if that was her phone and if I could see it. She held it out
That's what he
slightly.
said?
I took control of it. And at that point, she clasped her hand around it and I did physically take it from her.
Okay.
Yes.
And this was on January 29th, 2020?
Yes.
Okay. Sometime in the afternoon?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And this was at the, just right across the street from the courthouse?
Yes, sir.
The command, what is that building referred to?
It's
The
called the
headquarters?
Office of the Sheriff, or commonly known as OTS. It's at 27 East Vermejo Avenue.
Okay.
Okay.
And during the interview, you had been watching some of this interview going on in a different room?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
And you had been doing some other things as well while
While
the interview was going on?
yes.
It looked like
Hey,
at one
Marjorie.
point, you said in your report that you had been talking to Sergeant Rocky Hubble and doing some other things and would come back and look in and see what was going on. Would that
That's
be
correct.
a fair statement? Okay.
Generally, from a lieutenant level, that is something that as I'm being briefed either by detectives or
Nancy.
sergeants, I would be multitasking during an interview like that.
Okay.
Okay.
So Gannon, just kind of a timeline as far as you know, January 27th, 2020, Gannon is reported missing or run away by Miss Stauch in the evening, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Right,
On the
Jesse?
28th of January of that year, Gannon's father comes back into town and there is a meeting at a Starbucks in the evening between Miss Stauch and Al Stauch, Gannon's father.
I'm unclear as to the exact timeline on that, so I'm not sure.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
But then the 29th, we've already talked about. That's when she went down and did the video recorded interview and her phone was seized.
Right, Nancy? Not even a
And
compliment.
then on February the 7th is when the seizure of the home at Mandan Drive took place.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, from the 29th to the 7th, which is when she did the interview, to the 7th, that's about what, 8 or 9 days that went by between the seizure of the phone and the seizure of the house?
Have you done the math on that?
29, 30.
Eh,
I'm not very good at it, but I think 8 or 9 days.
Okay.
But would you say from the
Okay.
January 29th to February 7th, there's 8 or 9 days between the seizure of the phone at the police or the deputy's station where you took it from her to where the house at Mandan Drive was seized?
Yes, and multiple warrants executed at the house as well.
Okay.
Okay.
And you already told Mr. Allen, while it's important to have a crime scene or a possible crime scene locked down because evidence can disappear, it can be tainted, it can be destroyed, contaminated, all these other things. Is that correct?
There's a possibility of that,
Yes.
yes.
And that's why you seized the phone you testified to, because she could have destroyed the evidence, gotten rid of the phone, whatever. A lot of stuff could happen. And so that's why it was important, exigent circumstances, that you took this phone, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
And ultimately, that's why you seized the house on February 7th, to keep evidence from leaving, disappearing, spoiling, whatever you want to call it.
Once it was determined that the house was a point that we kept coming back to, and realized that the investigative efforts were very complex and were ongoing and continuing, yes,
Oh,
that decision was made.
Hey, Susie.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, on January 27th or 29th, I'm sorry, during the interview, you made a determination that there was exigent circumstances to take the phone, to seize it from Ms. Stauch, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
You also based that determination on the fact that she had really changed her story. And as Mr. Allen asked you, first story was diametrically opposed to what second story was, correct?
Yes.
Okay. At that time, you could have arrested her for attempt to influence a public servant,
It doesn't sound
correct? Giving the vastly diametrically opposed stories to law enforcement.
Remember, at this point in time, we also had no body, and there was concern that there were additional leads coming in. So there was a possibility that was a concern. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now it's
Enough
why
to
didn't you
where
arrest
you were
her
able to
sooner?
seize a phone of Ms. Stauch into the possible investigation of Gannon's disappearance.
Correct.
And I'm not talking about, charging her with murder at the time. I'm talking about attempt to influence the public servants.
Sure.
Why didn't you charge her then? You said in your report that we believed she was giving false information. I believe that this went into the calculus about making your decision of seizing the phone. Why didn't you just go ahead and charge her with something then and arrest her?
What would that have gained for the actual investigation in Gannon at that
Jackie,
point?
hi.
Well, it would. I can't answer the questions.
Okay.
So, I mean, if that's just a rhetorical question for the jury. So,
More of a clarifying question as to where you're going with that. I would like to help you with that.
Look at Werner.
well,
He doesn't even know.
Commander, there's information that after the 29th, but before the house was locked down on the February 7th, that Ms. Stauch and her family had arrived at the Mandan Drive house with a moving van and moved out of the residence, correct?
I don't remember the exact dates, but there was a timeline in there that they did move, yes.
It was between her interview on January 29th and but after that, but before the house was seized on February 7th, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And also there's allegations and evidence that has come in that actually Miss Stauch, after January 29th,
Oh no, Little Red.
after the interview and the phone seizure, transported Gannon's body to Florida and dumped it in a swampy area. That happened after January 29th, but before February 7th, the house being seized, correct?
Not sure exactly when that occurred, but again, I would have to actually go back to reports to see the exact timeline. I apologize, I'm not able to give a more clear answer on that.
Hey,
If you're telling me that is what your understanding is, I could agree to that likely being the case.
If she had been arrested on January 29th at the police station when the phone was seized, then she would have been in custody and not had the opportunity the first week of February to dispose of Gannon's body in Florida, correct?
I can't make that determination, especially within our jurisdiction. A false reporting is actually a misdemeanor crime, which you would be served a summons, and so she would never been arrested and placed into custody. If there was enough information for a felony attempt to influence, that is a very low bond and generally something that people are out on extremely quickly.
But attempt to influence, this would have qualified, and it is a felony offense. She could have had a bond set much higher if it was a attempt to influence as part of a high-profile murder investigation. You could have asked for a higher
It wasn't
bond,
murder
correct?
yet.
Again, I believe that at this point in time, you're making an assumption that on January 29th, we were able to prove or have more than a suspicion that
Right.
Gannon was murdered by
Exactly.
his stepmother. So I think that's reaching.
All right, can I have just a second?
You may go ahead.
All right, can I have just a second?
The lawyer, like, where are you going? with
Tortellini,
this?
help me out here.
So just to be clear, did you
He's
seize the
done.
defendant's phone?
I did.
I'm kidding.
Oh, cooking tortellini.
To make an arrest in a felony case, what do you have to have?
Probable cause.
What does probable cause mean?
Probable cause is a set of circumstances that would lead a reasonable magistrate or judge, or even to believe that a crime has occurred and the person that you're arresting committed that crime.
Can you arrest somebody on mere suspicion?
No,
Can you arrest somebody just because a child is missing?
no,
Did you have probable cause on January 29th to arrest the defendant?
no.
When a arrest warrant was issued in early March of 2020, is that when probable cause had been achieved and an arrest warrant issued?
Yes,
Did that unfortunately not prevent Gannon's remains from being transported from Colorado to Pensacola, Florida?
unfortunately, it did not.
The fact that Gannon's remains were found 1,300 miles away from Colorado Springs, was that indicative of a very calculated move by whoever moved Gannon's remains from here to there?
I believe it was.
Requiring driving on lots of roads and following laws.
Absolutely, and ensuring that the transport of a human body was concealed extremely well from anyone who may have had contact with that person.
In the fact that, were you familiar with the location where Gannon's remains were ultimately found?
I wasn't personally familiar with it, but yes, I do know where it occurred.
Okay. The fact that his body was found thrown over the edge of a bridge, is that also indicative of somebody trying to hide valuable evidence in a homicide investigation?
Especially 1,300 miles from the reported missing location, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Do any of the jurors have any questions?
Thank you, Science Sense, for the super chat. That's awesome. Thank you so much. That she can still use this. I know, right, Homer? You would think that there would be something that they could do about that. And why she would even want to, you know, it's bizarre. That was painful to listen to Will Cook. All right, jury questions. I'm hoping the next witness will be interesting.
All right, Commander, you may step down. Thank
Yeah,
you.
even the jury's like, all right, we have no questions.
Oh.
Alyssa
Right,
Beresford.
give us someone good. Give us someone good.
Alyssa
Come on.
Beresford,
Wake us all up. Let's go. Let's go.
next witness. I'll go ahead and unpin this message.
Letecia, you look rough.
Diana, I do expect the defense
just
to have a
You
lot
miss
more.
Samara.
Or have
I
a lot
know,
more
little
Ma'am,
to,
would you
Ed.
step forward, please?
do
Raise your
with-
right hand.
Who dis?
they'll be doing a lot more once they
Do you
get to
swear
the-
affirm the testimony back to
Oh.
this matter to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
So if that's seat in the witness stand, please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Tisha.
And Judge, just as a preliminary matter, before we get into Ms. Beresford's testimony, we have quite a number of photos that we're going to be admitting through her. It's basically 528 through 678. And to be efficient, I've
shit,
asked defense if they
150.
will stipulate to admission of those items. so that we can just jump into her testimony. So I would move for admission of 528 through that last number, which was
678.
678. Thank you.
It's 150
Yes.
photos, man.
If these are graphic photos, we will not be showing
Exhibits
them.
Exhibits 528 through 678 will be admitted. Go ahead.
And just before I get into the testimony, I want to put these photos up here on the. There are some from a different witness in here, but those.
See what
Good
this
morning. Good morning, ma'am. How are you doing?
witness is.
Good morning. All right.
Will you please introduce yourself to our jury and then spell your first and last name for the court reporter?
My name is Alyssa Beresford. B as in boy, E as in Edward, RRIE, S as in Sam, F as in Frank, ORD.
Ms. Beresford, what do you do for a living?
I am a senior crime scene investigator and the technical unit lead for the crime scene unit for the Colorado Springs Metro Crime Lab.
What does a senior crime scene investigator do?
A senior crime scene investigator has all of the same
Okay.
duties.
We know all
Call
this.
24
I just want to
to
get,
attend several training classes.
okay. She'll probably be moved as an expert.
Rest of any new developments in technology or training?
We're going to
Bloodstain Pattern Analyst Conference.
Testified as a court qualified expert witness?
Yes, court
Yes.
qualified. There we go.
In what jurisdictions? Groundwork through you or?
But we do use it frequently when we have an indication that the bloodstains may have been cleaned up because it is a search tool for those latent or hidden bloodstains.
Does latent just mean hidden?
Yes.
Okay. Do you use low light photography when you're using Blue Star?
Yes,
They're going to show
Are you
photos,
familiar
guys,
with
of
the
the
phrase road
the
mapping
blood.
technique?
I am.
What does that mean?
Road mapping is a technique
Yes,
used to document bloodstains,
sure.
especially when a bloodstain pattern analysis may be conducted later on down the line. What it entails is a lot of extra documentation
Okay, I want to just
bring bloodstains.
to it.
And based
So tell the jury about, I guess, some of those different types. For instance, a transfer blood stain. What
Okay,
does that
this is
mean?
important.
So a transfer stain is going to be when a bloody object comes into contact with an object that does not have blood on it, therefore transferring that blood from one thing to
Transfer
another.
blood.
So if somebody had blood on their hand and touched a table and wiped it, would that be a transfer stain?
Correct.
What about expirated blood stain pattern?
So expiration refers to blood in an airway. It is
Which Gannon had.
indicative, or you can tell that it's expiration if there are air bubbles within the blood.
Look at
If
Tisha
there
alert.
is maybe a little bit of extra.
Isn't it very interesting to you guys when Letecia is very alert and active and listening and when she isn't? It's very disturbing, honestly.
Liquid to it, like spit, saliva, maybe nasal mucus. But you have to have an injury to the airway in order to classify it as an expiration stain.
So correct me in my terminology here, but if there's like an arterial bleed where blood is spurting, what kind of stain would that potentially cause?
That would be a spurt stain.
Okay, so tell the jury about that.
So arterial or arteries are very unique because they're very pressurized and they're very high volume of blood, which means that if an artery is nicked or severed, we're going to have a very high volume of blood that's ejected under pressure. So this is going to create a very unique blood stain. Typically, what we're seeing are very large circular or elliptical stains with a lot of volume in them.
If somebody has a heavily bleeding head wound and is laying, say, on the floor here, and it's seeping onto the floor, what kind of stain would that be?
Depending upon the surface of the floor, it would either be a blood pool where the blood is just flowing out and it's only gravity is acting upon it. Or if it's a porous surface like carpet, it's going to be a saturation stain. So if you think of, you've got a spill on your counter and you take a paper towel and wipe it up and that liquid seeps into the paper towel, that's saturating the paper towel.
Can you have both a saturation stain and a pooling stain in one single event?
Yes,
Meaning that blood seeped, saturated through carpet and then seeped into a pool area.
correct.
How useful is blood stain pattern analysis in a criminal investigation?
Bloodstain pattern analysis is typically used when we don't know what happened. Because there's information that can be gained from bloodstain patterns, we typically employ it when we need to know what the story was, or if what our witnesses are telling us doesn't match up to what we're seeing on scene. Bloodstain pattern analysis can be used to determine what kind of mechanisms created the bloodstain patterns, maybe a sequence of events, or even the location of that blood source or injury within the scene.
What about, can you to determine to some level the amount of energy used that caused a blood pattern to exist?
Not necessarily in degrees of velocity or force.
Okay. What are some limitations with bloodstain pattern analysis?
Well, we can only work with what we see in front of us. So if all of the bloodstain patterns aren't there, then we won't have the full picture and we won't be able to tell the full story. Some other limitations are mostly documentation, in the sense of if we don't have good photographs, if we don't have good diagramming, then for an analyst, it's going to be very difficult to try and go through all of that and make determinations. On top of that, depending upon what investigative question is trying to be answered, we may want DNA analysis to be done on those bloodstains so that we can link the pattern or mechanism with an individual.
When you are looking at a potential bloodstain pattern for analysis, can you sometimes see that there's been some effort to clean a particular area, potentially clean bloodstain patterns?
Yes.
What do you see when you're that tells you those types of things?
In most cases, it just doesn't make sense.
Thank you, Lisa.
But the blood itself, once it's dried,
May Letecia live a long life with mosquito bites in between her toes. That's fucked up, Lisa. And I love it. Thank you so much. But I hope she forever has an itch she can't scratch, if you know what I mean. Hey, Neat Noodle.
is actually very hard to clean up. It doesn't just wipe up very easily. And so that blood becomes more dilute, more transparent, lighter in color as you attempt to clean it up. And the well-defined edges of those bloodstain patterns start to blur. So that's an indication that it's been altered in some form.
If, say, we're talking about a wall and there's a high volume of blood on a wall, and then water or some cleaning agent is added to that blood stain, will that cause the blood stain to actually run down the wall?
It can.
Can it cause it to run behind light sockets or switches or anything like that?
Absolutely.
Can it cause it to eventually pool on a flat surface below that particular wall?
KJ?
If enough liquid is supplied, yes.
Can you actually sometimes see any wiping marks or what would appear to be wipe marks on blood stains?
You can, yes.
Are there any other things that can sort of go along those same ideas of indicative of cleaning a bloodstain pattern?
Not necessarily. That I think
Okay.
pretty much covers it.
And it wasn't a trick question. I just truly didn't know. You talked about in the limitations portion of it that if information is missing, does cleaning a blood scene remove information that would have been helpful if it had existed at the time that you show up?
Absolutely.
I want to talk specifically now about the case that you're here testifying on. How did you become involved in the investigation into Gannon Stauch's disappearance?
I was initially requested to respond on February 3rd to the El Palmar Youth Sports Complex to investigate a potential clandestine grave.
So the El Palmar Youth Sports Complex down south, not too far from the sheriff's office, correct? I mean, the jail, I should say.
Correct.
Is it typical to respond to those types of scenes if you don't know where a body might be?
Yes.
Did it turn out whether this clandestine grave was associated with this case or not associated?
It was not associated
So how do you know that?
because it ended up just being a pile of dirt.
Okay. And then what else did you do? Did you get request to go out to the actual home on February 5th?
Yes.
What was the nature of that request?
I was requested to respond and document visible blood stains that were found within the residence.
And what was the address of that residence?
6627 Mandan Drive.
Tell the jury, you don't just jump in and start going crazy, do you?
No.
So tell the jury what the process is when you first arrive at a scene like at this 6627 Mandan Drive.
Whenever we respond to process a scene, we are always going to get some sort of briefing from the detectives or law enforcement personnel present on scene. That's going to kind of give us some information, maybe what we're looking for. They have, at that point, hopefully conducted interviews, so there may be some critical pieces of information. Once we've gotten our briefing, we're going to conduct a walkthrough where all we're doing is getting our bearings, looking through the scene, kind of developing our plan of attack on how we're going to process the scene. After that, we're going to process the scene from the exterior, moving inwards, using the least intrusive methods and going more intrusive as we progress throughout the scene processing.
So when you say least intrusive to more intrusive, is that basically you start out with a wide aperture and then you really get tight focus as you start to get into specific things that are of importance?
In some cases, yes.
Okay.
Aperture
So
is the wrong
what
word for
was
that, I
the
think.
focus of your processing on February 5th?
February 5th, I was solely focused on the southeast basement bedroom and the visible bloodstains located within.
And we've already got the photos up there and admitted, again, a big number of items, 528 through 678 in the binder sitting in front of you. Did you take all of those photos?
Probably.
Probably.
Got confused.
In of the scene that you processed on February 5th of 2020?
Yes.
Okay. Did the bloodstain pattern that you were examining on that particular day include two walls, baseboards, and floor area?
Yes.
Which general walls are we talking about for your processing on February 5th?
The south and the east walls in the southeast corner of the room.
Okay. Do you somehow label the different areas so that you can keep track of which areas you're talking about or taking photographs of to document them?
Yes.
How do you do that?
In this case, I chose to label all of the stains found on the walls under the identifier of A. So every stain was A1, A2, all the way up to 854. And then the baseboards had the identifier of B, and I had B1 through B5.
And then did you also, and so do you do that with a placard? Do you actually put a placard of placard A on certain surfaces, placard B on certain surfaces?
Yes,
Did you also have a placard C?
I did.
What was placard C?
Placard C was a potential blood stain that was located on the window screen in the room.
Okay. When you're processing a scene like this, is it typical that you might also take swabs of different samples?
Absolutely.
Why do you do that?
We will take swabs so that when we're documenting it, and if they're then later on down the line, we can say, hey, this stain was this person.
Okay. How do you do that swab process?
Depending upon the size of the stain, we're either going to use one or two basically Q-tips. We're going to wet it with distilled water and rub it against the surface to pick up the substance. We'll then package it in its own packaging, and it moves on down the line until it's submitted into evidence.
Those Q-tips that you're referencing, are they sealed before you use them?
Yes.
Why is that?
We want them to be sterile. That way we're not.
They also can't be contaminated. Did you use that same exact process you just described?
I did.
Show us
Particular
The bloodstains. It wasn't until we got pretty close to the wall, and we were really looking for them that we found them. And after we had identified them, which it took about an hour and a half to go through and identify all of those tiny little bloodstains, It definitely was not a static event. There was something dynamic that happened there, more than just a single.
That's what it is. Every time, how many times do I tell you guys? I forget it. It was not static. It was a very dynamic event.
There was something dynamic that happened there, more than just a single event
He fought
within that room.
What do you mean by that?
I've been to crime scenes with a single gunshot wound that has no blood. I've been to crime scenes with a few stab wounds that have no blood. To have blood at that scale and of those types of patterns, there has to be some movement within that scene. So some object with blood, whether it's the blood source itself, impact events, or a bloody object being swung, was present within that room.
Would it be helpful for you to explain what you're talking about, to put a particular photo up on the screen so the jury can see sort of what you're describing? And I'm going to rely on your expertise to tell me which one would be best to help describe what you just talked about.
Sure.
If these are just blood pictures, we are going to be showing those, just so you're aware. We're not going to be showing any autopsy photos of Gannon, but if these are blood spatter analysis,
Have we seen
will be
photographs
showing
of the wall prior to labels?
Not with labels, no.
Not with labels, okay. Let's go with People's Exhibit.
Remember, Beresford. You can either describe what you're looking at in the photo that's on the table in front of you, or if you want to point out things on this wall, use the pointer that should be up there in the witness stand somewhere.
Got it. Okay. So this photograph is an overall photograph of the bedroom after all of the stains have been identified. So you can see in this photograph, there's those little black rectangles. Those are each going to identify a minimum of one spatter stain. And by spatter stain, I mean a circular or elliptical stain that is produced by some external force being applied to liquid blood, whether that's on a surface or from an injury itself. So this kind of shows the magnitude of those spatter stains. It reached fairly far. We have a height of 5 to 6 feet tall, and it spanned on the, I believe that's the east wall, at least 6 feet down the wall. So this isn't just one area. There's some movement involved with this.
So let's dig into this photo just a little bit. There's the white on that, I'm sorry, the yellow that stretches through both walls on that south and then east wall as well.
Yes.
What is that yellow stuff there?
That is road mapping tape. So that is part of our road mapping documentation. And that allows a bloodstain pattern analyst to look at a stain, reference the scale tape, and say this stain was approximately 5 feet high.
Are all of the blood stains that you looked at for this particular case, with the exception of the window, all contained below and with inside of that yellow border road mapping tape?
There is one additional stain that is, if I may I
Yeah,
stand?
absolutely. Just make sure when you stand up, because you're away from the microphone, that the furthest juror can hear you.
So there is a stain that is just past the reaches of the scale tape, and it's going to be on the baseboard, kind of over here on the lower left-hand corner of the photograph.
And I'm going to have you stay there for just a moment. All of those white rectangular stickers, are those your evidence stickers that you placed that are below and inside of that yellow road mapping tape?
Yes.
What about the white things that we see above the road mapping tape?
Those are wall decorations that were there prior to my arrival.
So those have nothing to do with your analysis of this scene, correct? Okay. You mentioned the height and I'm going to use the word enormity. Did that surprise you for this particular scene?
It did.
Why?
At that point, we really had no indication of what the cause of death could be. So something like this is a lot more for lack of a better word, violent than I expected to see.
Did this indicate to you that there had been a significant bloodletting that occurred in this bedroom?
Yes.
Did these stains lend themselves to one pattern? We talked about the other patterns earlier. Did these lend to one pattern, or were there multiple different patterns potentially?
So because of the cleaning that was involved, we really couldn't say that it was from a specific pattern. If you think of a photograph, which is made up of a lot of tiny little pixels, right? If you have all of the pixels together, you can see what the picture is and what it means. If you only have 50 pixels and they're randomly spread across a photograph, you're not going to be able to tell what may actually be in that photo.
Were there some of these blood stains that showed potentially different directionality?
Yes.
Can you show us a couple of examples of that, just so that we understand what you're talking about? And then again, just tell me which exhibit number would be best for you to point to for that.
Exhibit 572.
Okay, so let's publish 572. Okay, so we've got 572 displayed on the screen behind you. And again, if it's might be best to just stand up and point to different things so that the jury can see what it is you're talking about. What is it that we're looking at in 572?
So in this photograph, there are 3 or 4 tiny little spatter stains. So these are going to be this one here down at the bottom. We have 2 near the scale sticker and then 1 a little bit farther out. Now for spatter stains, especially elliptical spatter stains, we can usually tell directionality based off of what we call the tail. So as blood hits a surface, it's going to elongate, and then kind of what's left over is going to create what looks like a tail, and that's going to tell us the direction it was moving. In this specific photograph, we have a couple of different directionalities. So this lower stain is going to have a downward directionality. You can see it comes to a point there at the bottom of the stain. That's going to be the tail. This stain up here closest to the scale sticker has an upward directionality, and it's upward from left to right. And we can tell that by the tail that's at the upper corner of the stain.
When we have these types of photographs and blood stain patterns existing in a scene where there's different directionalities, what does that tell you as an expert in blood stain pattern analysis?
That tells me that there's probably more than one event that's happening to produce these stains.
Was there
I know, Roro.
evidence in this particular scene that there had been efforts to clean up the blood staining that was on the walls and baseboard?
Yes.
Can you point us to some photographs in those photos that are in front of you that will help us understand what you mean by that?
Leticia's continuing to draw.
586.
Okay,
She
so
is
we're going to put
glancing up at
586
each
on the board behind you.
image when it comes up on the screen, though. Then she goes back to drawing.
Okay, so just for orientation purposes, this is the power outlet that's lower, closer to the floor on that east wall in Gannon's bedroom.
Correct.
All right, so what are we looking at here that shows you there's some indication that cleaning had occurred in this bedroom?
So there's actually 2 things within this photograph. The first, we can see a visible blood stain right here in the center. The edges of this stain are very blurred, meaning it's not well defined. It's been altered in some way. So it's probably been cleaned. At the same time, we have this line here, kind of in between the socket and the sticker scale, that is a diluted blood stain. If you think of when you're moving your furniture after you've been walking around for a while and all of a sudden you realize how dirty your carpet is because you're looking at the nice clean carpet versus the dirty carpet, same theory. We have the section of wall that was covered by the plate that is clean, and the line that defines that diluted blood stain right next to it.
Is there also some potential blood staining sort of on that outlet in the screw area that would hold the plate on there in that picture as well?
There is.
Does that also potentially lead to a conclusion that cleaning had occurred?
Yes.
Okay. The well, first of all, we can see texture of the wall here, correct?
Yes.
Is the walls, both the south and the east wall, similarly textured as what we see in people's 586?
Yes.
Were the majority of the blood spots or stains in the recesses of that wall texture?
That's hard to say. There actually was a fair amount of stains that were on the top of the surface, but there were some that were caught within the crevices.
Okay. Some point, did you go back out to this particular scene with a person by the name of Tom Griffin?
I did.
What was that for?
Mr. Griffin was doing a bloodstain pattern analysis on this case and wanted to examine the bloodstains further. So I went out to assist with his examination and any further documentation that he required.
Do you know whether or not he actually prepared and submitted an expert report in this case?
I do.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach with People's Exhibit 679? What People's Exhibit 679 is?
Yes.
How can you tell that?
Based upon the barcode label that
C, I think it was.
I collected this on February.
Is this the same bedroom that we've been talking?
It wasn't.
Subsequent to the time that you collected this item, has that bag or evidence?
My own gloves, because those are going to be extremely large.
Thank you. Sorry, since there's a pause, I'll say this. Thank you to everyone who's showing support for Gannon with emojis. Just be considerate. If you use a lot of emojis, it takes up a lot of space in chat.
That all that blood spatter, guys, tells the story of what happened.
Is that the bed sheet that you collected on that date?
Yes,
Is it in the same or substantially the same condition today as the day that you collected it?
it is.
And at this time, I'd move for admission of People's Exhibit 679.
Defense? No objection. Exhibit 679.
Just to compare.
That would be a question better asked for the detectives.
Okay.
I collected it for anything that needed to be done in the future.
Okay, so a detective just says, hey, get that, and you do it.
Yes.
Okay. Can I have just a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
Hey, Stephanie, blah, bitty, blah. Hi, peace, love, and pugs. Lena.
One final thing. Did you find any shell casings in that bedroom?
No,
Did you find any knife or sharp objects that could have been used to stab somebody?
no.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Defense examination, Mr. Cook.
Thank you.
Come on, Cook. Come on, Cook.
Hi, how are you? I think we've met before several times in the last few months. So good to see you again.
Hey, Carolina.
I just have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
So your testimony to Mr. Allen was that from the staining, the blood pattern, that you think that this was a very violent event?
Yes.
Okay. And actually that it was multiple events?
Correct.
What do you mean by multiple events? I think I know what you mean, but maybe the jury doesn't. What do you mean by that?
Multiple events could be multiple blunt force impacts. It could mean, in this case, different mechanisms. The bloodstains that we saw were indicative of everything from a gunshot wound to blunt force and sharp force injuries.
Multiple events could have been a shooting and multiple stab wounds with the
Could.
knife. Okay. And
Okay.
also, in addition to being very violent, multiple events that the blood was coming from different directions.
Correct.
Just all coming from one way. It was,
Yes.
you said you had the head and the tail facing one way, the head and the tail facing another way with another stain. So it was coming from everywhere.
From different directions, yes.
Different
Thank you.
directions.
Redirect.
I don't think I have anything on.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Ms. Beresford? All right, looks like we have one.
So-
If you would retrieve that, Mr. Allen. and
It
counsel approach,
wasn't
please.
fast, guys, and this is
Switch
one of the
to this view.
questions I'll
They do that.
always have is like, did she have all of the weapons with her when she did this? Did she start and leave the room and come back to get different items? Because when you look at the ADT movements, she wasn't in there for long. There was movement constantly, up, down, up, down, up, down. He fought, guys. Look at her, looking at the jury.
So, a plea bargain, plead guilty, convict her of the charge.
Stop
going for.
eating your fingers, Tisha.
Ms. Beresford, we're not sure if this is a question that is right for you or for a different witness. So I'm going to ask it. Does anything about the blood stain patterns at the crime scene suggest a chronological order of events?
So because a lot of information was cleaned away, we really couldn't, or I couldn't tell a chronological order for any of it.
All right, I will allow reasonable follow-up as to that question. Only prosecution.
Only just that the bloodstain patterns that you were seeing were consistent with all those different mechanisms, either a gunshot, a knife or sharp force, or blunt force,
Correct.
or combination of any of those three.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Cook? All right. Ms. Beresford, you may step down. Thank you, ma'am.
These jurors have been so impressive.
They have been. This is where the morning of day 10 ends, so I'm going to cut it there. But I know we have the next witness is probably the one that's going to go through all of the photos and show the directions, because I remember that they show the directions and the arrows and this and that and what it would most likely indicate, along with the blood transfer on the boxes and the tubs that were in the storage room. We still have the Google search expert who's going to show all of the Google searches Letecia did. That was an interesting witness. And Grusing. We have Grusing up on the stand. And so, yeah, we're interested. I'm doing Wade tomorrow. And so then we'll probably do Tisha, the next episode of Tisha, Friday. So not tomorrow, the next day. Like I said at the beginning of the live, if you are a Patreon member, keep your eye out. We're probably going live on Patreon tomorrow. And so you guys let me know over on Patreon what time would be the best for you guys. And yeah, so I don't know if anybody else is live tonight, so I don't know where to send you, but keep an eye out for Allie. She's been doing Crime and Coffee in the morning at 8 a.m. Yeah, Dr. Torres too. Yes, Julie. Yes. And yeah, so I will hopefully see you guys tomorrow for Wade. If not, I will see you guys Friday for more Tisha. So sick of Wade, but not because of you. Oh, I get it, RL. That's totally fine. It's been interesting. It's been interesting. Hi, Cat Mom in Florida. The Google searches were such an interesting moment, and why I loved going through the Google searches is because they were so cringe. I love watching Tisha being forced to sit in there while they're being read out loud. And I saw someone leave the comment earlier, you know, I wish I knew if Tisha was experiencing embarrassment or shame. That's the thing about Letecia. I don't think she experiences those emotions the way we do. I hope that she was experiencing pure embarrassment, but I don't think she was. And I think that's part of like the borderline personality disorder, not experiencing the emotions. But what I did notice with Wade, listening to the Wade calls, he seems to mimic try to mimic emotions. And we don't see that from Letecia. Like when the girl Mia was on the call and she was crying, he wasn't crying, but he was trying to mimic what she was doing and kind of mirror her reaction. Like, I know, oh, I know, baby, I know. So at least we have Wade who tries to mimic emotions. Letecia doesn't. Oh, they will continue, Callie, to kind of have this back and forth with one another and laugh. It gets bad. Yeah, Melanie, I know. Yep. But yeah, RL, exactly. All right, guys, I will see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful night. Keep an eye over on Patreon, and I will talk to you guys soon.